Is it harder or easier to succeed in business or in sports?
I mean, I think it's easier in business. There's so many rules in football. I mean, everybody wants to win, and you really regard winning as winning the Super Bowl. You know, not just playing in it, but winning it. And, you know, between the draft and the salary cap and, you know, people think they can solve problems with money. It really means, which is not the case. You solve problems with brains and working hard. And I think it's those teams that really, you know, concentrate on being the best, and you're not going to buy your way into it. I guess when I got the phone call and I thought about it, and people would ask me, "Well, why'd you do it?" It's because I could afford it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And
So, ladies and gentlemen, here is an exclusive that you probably didn't know before, but I have visual evidence. I found you in South Africa researching the viability of an NFL expansion team in Cape Town. Is that correct?
Well, you found me in Cape Town in June of this year, and I was very interested in football down there and what that great game that Nelson Mandela talked about, and the ability of sports, including football, to bring people together. But it was not for an NFL expansion.
No, and
team.
of course I'm kidding, but it is a world coincidence. We found each other on respective trip to Robben Island. But a segue into, it was great seeing you there, but the segue into expansion, NFL in London, NFL in Canada, NFL in Mexico, NFL as one-off games. Talk about that generally.
Well, you know, I think that the one-off games are likely to continue for a while, maybe for a long while, because the idea of having a division outside of the United States with long-distance travel, I don't think is realistic. And it may not be realistic in the current environment to think of a league that's got more than 32 teams. So I think the London experiment might be extended to Europe. I've read about the possibility of games in Germany, which was the heart of NFL Europe when we had it. But I think that you're not going to see divisions and conferences outside the United States. What you could see would be feeder leagues in Canada, Mexico, and Europe over time. And I think that would be a great thing for the sport.
World League of American Football 2, basically?
Yes.
Or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, okay. Basketball, Georgetown. Congratulations, by the way, and nobody knows this, but he is the other 33 on the Georgetown University basketball team. You're in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Well, number 33 is in the Hall of Fame, which was the number that I wore when I played at Georgetown.
So who else? Somebody else wore it?
It was also worn by Patrick Ewing, and it only got in the Hall of Fame after he wore it, not me.
Got it. Understood. But you had the rebound record for a long time at Georgetown.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And also, more relevant to this, through 2008 to 11, you were chairman of the board of trustees and on the board for a long time. So you have a perspective of college athletics that few people do. Overall take of where college athletics is today and where it's going.
Well, I think overall college athletics are solid and an important part of higher education. I think that the balance between academics and commerce could use some tweaking. And as you know, I'm a member of the Knight Commission, and the Knight Commission has been working with the NCAA to try and have an influence on redirecting some of the revenues that come from athletics to broader purposes. And I think the other aspect that needs more attention is the scholarship system, because the athletes, especially in Division I football and basketball, are committing so much time now to athletics.
Well, I have a personal stake in this too, because I compared, and I think I'm about 2 days older than you are. But I feel like I'm 35. Couldn't you plead to these guys to amend the bylaws? I mean, look what you've done.
No, you know, it's served us well. Rick, by the time I retire, it will be almost 18 years I've been in the position. So I think it's time, time for somebody else to take over. And it's such a unique and special organization.
But yet you expected maybe a little more. Do you have a giant chip that carried you through the Redskins?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I got to tell you the whole story. This is,
yeah.
So 1977, obviously things were quite a bit different then. I thought that I might get drafted, but I wasn't really sure. they didn't have, I don't think there was a combine then. You didn't really, the scouting wasn't as open as it is now. Well, they put me in a van with about 5 other players, and the Redskins, they put me up at the Marriott, which is out by Dulles Airport where the Redskins facility was. And they drove us in the van. They drove us down to downtown Washington, D.C., and they took us out for lunch. And I'm thinking, this is great. I've never seen Washington, D.C., but what about being picked? And I've got so many friends that are still in the business, and it's just really, really so challenging and changing so rapidly.
How about the friends? We all have a lot of common friends. How about some of the friends who were in the business until a couple of years ago, including a national championship basketball coach and an incredible football coach and an athletic director at Arizona State. A lot of guys who said, I can't deal with this anymore. They wouldn't say it that way, but it's become more like professional athletics, hasn't it?
There's nothing like it in professional sports in the United States. There's some CFL teams that have a very similar structure, and then obviously, and also there's some teams and soccer teams in Europe that are community owned. But it works well for us, and I think there's advantages and disadvantages to our structure. But I would say on the whole, there's it's beneficial, and where we really see it is our fan base. We have a social media platform called Packers Everywhere, and our fans really are everywhere, all over the country.
Delve into the advantages and disadvantages for just a second. Let me do the advantages first. When I was working with the NFL and looking at Lambeau and a little small part in the league kind of expertise top down that ended up in the January 2000 $300 million facelift and the Brown County referendum. The strongest, if you would have thought in any of the other 31 markets that, let's go tap the fans to, buy pieces of a stadium investment, you'd be run out of the country. But it was just unbelievable how this became not only preserve Lambeau, but preserve the museum that is now Green Bay's and Wisconsin's treasure. Incredibly unique in a number of contexts.
Rich McKay, President and CEO. How is that for an intro?
Incredible. Why don't you keep going?
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask the questions and give you the answers at the same time.
Good. Well, when Arthur and I discussed coming here, I had an agreement with him that I was not going to be involved in a new stadium deal, that the Georgia Dome was a good home. That changed probably 2 years later. And I think, Rick, for us, 2007 was a defining moment. No. I thought we'd be talking about, leases. And,
well, you were for a while. We'll do that for a minute, but we'll do that later. I thought we weren't going to talk about it.
I don't sleep. We're on an elevating arc. This is just another piece of that elevating arc.
What were Thanksgiving dinners like?
Yeah, crazy. We didn't have Thanksgiving dinners, right?
You were playing, right.
The cool thing about growing up in it, Rick, for me, was probably the 3 years my brothers played was as cool as it can get.
First of all, your family has a history in football, but also your family's had a history of overcoming and thriving. Your mom a sharecropper, your dad and grandpa were involved in football, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, my parents, I think because we didn't grow up with much, my parents were both educators and pushed us hard from an education standpoint. We didn't have a lot of financial resources that I literally have seen the people used to tell people, seeing somebody give their shirt off their back. I really have seen my mom do that. We were the house that always people knew that they could come to get a warm meal. And even, it's very emotional, even for me at my mom's funeral, a couple years ago, there were people, she had a $25 book scholarship, and there were some of those students that she gave book scholarships literally 50 years ago came to her funeral. And you think $25, you blow that on a lunch.
2014 was the first Super Bowl played in an open-air stadium in a cold weather city. But you had no control over the weather. The week before, you look at the forecast. What? Did you sleep that week before?
You know what? Anyone who went to that Super Bowl knows it was like unseasonably warm. There was all these warming tents were put in place, and it was a great thing. Actually, I was a big part of the presentation and the plan to bring the Super Bowl but I had actually left to go to the Jaguars, but I came back to the game to attend the Super Bowl. And, the next day they had tremendous ice storms. So had those ice storms occurred, the day before, it would have been Ice Bowl too.
And it's basically setting the standard for the industry. You don't have to say that. I'll say it. We can both say it. Let's spend some time talking about some NFL-related issues. First, we talked a little bit about crypto and $700 million, but talk about gambling generally. If you'd have thought 5 years ago, pre-Supreme Court decision, that gambling would be as prolific as it is today, people would have thought you were crazy. Give me your overall impression of where it is and where it's going.
Oh, I think we're just beginning. And the reality is, if you think about it, not every state has legalized, right? We're sitting here in a state that doesn't necessarily have it. And so I think we're on the cusp of what becomes the future. And technology sort of follows this curve. If you think about what happened to Daily Fantasy and Yahoo and how that evolved, I think you're going to see the same evolution inside the gaming industry. But I do think that, one, it has to be done responsibly, of course.
Well, that was how I practiced.
But by the way, you've come a long way since then, even too, right? Just so you understand.
But, I think there's a narrative, obviously, about football participation now, but I think that the reality is, you have to make the choice about what's best for you at your dinner table, not based on a New York Times article or any media article or any narrative, but make the decision based on what's important for you.
But in 2011, you were faced with having to make sure your kids were growing up right.
Yeah.
But yet you also saw the numbers, Pop Warner or otherwise, the declining participation in youth football. You look back on your youth football experience, how did it help you in business, in life, in becoming the person you are?
Well, my wife will tell you that my whole life is like an itinerary. I think that's directly related to my football career. I think that the structure that football gives you is unique. And I think when your day is controlled from wake up till bedtime in training camp, but I think it gives you a focus. And then you go to college and you're practicing in the morning, going to class, practice again, study hall. You live a whole life like that. Yeah. And so when football's over, you want to still create some sort of structure in your life. You look on social media, you've got motivational Mondays and all these things that you see. But when you grow up in a locker room, it's all character leadership quotes all over the building. It's all buying in. It's all being accountable to the team. And that's why a lot of football players, a lot of student athletes become great salesmen. They become great people in the financial sector, banking, those result-oriented professions. I think you see a lot of athletes that gravitate towards that because it creates that sort of accountability, and that's either you win or you lose at the end of the day, and there's no in between. I think that's something that athletes can all take with them, that they learned as kids through college, and then if you play in the NFL, you've literally lived in a whole life of learning things that way.
Shift gears, but only slightly. So you and your wife, Linda, really committed to philanthropy. You started the Romen Oben Foundation 15 years ago. Talk a bit about it.
We started, as a player, my first 5-6 years in the league, you kind of go to everyone's charity event, everyone's hospital visit, and you kind of do a lot of different things, and you lend your name to everything, and then at some point you say, this is what's more important to me. I was born in Cameroon, like I said, Cameroon, West Africa. My wife's family's from Haiti, and we thought it was important to really help kids back home like us, and it's not whether or not they're going to be football players, because you've got girls, you've got everybody, but it's being educated, having the right amenities, books, and having computers. Things that people take for granted here.
So my dad bought this little orange school bus, all right, and it had all these quotes like it's things that would help you be successful, like it's more important to be nice than it is to be important, things like that.
Did he buy the bus with the quotes on them, or he put them on?
No, he put them all on there. But we would go to practice. He would go pick up everybody in all these hollows, take them to practice. We would practice, take everybody home. Take about 45 minutes, and of course I was the first one on the bus and the last one off because that was home. That was the home stop. He really taught us the importance of work ethic, investing in your time and something rather than spending it. You reap what you sow, perseverance, and how you have to continue to learn from your failings, how to overcome adversity, discipline to do things right. The old saying that I say all the time, you're going to suffer through one of two things in life, the pain of discipline or the pain of disappointment. That was on the bus. It was there. All right. So all these things go way back.
Yeah.
But the opportunities that created. I mean, I know he had not outside of myself 3 players that made All-American at West Virginia University and graduated from college and had a lot better lives, and they may never have participated if it wasn't for that. And I'm sure that if you ask any of them, they would say, just like me, that a lot of those things that I learned playing, the value of athletics is really, really important to developing a lot of the characteristics that help you be successful in life.
How did you get to this? How did it all start for you? But yeah, I mean, like I say, thank goodness for the internet, because people go back and look at it. I mean, just the injury that we were talking about, I think's been viewed close to 20 million times. And when somebody gets hurt, it's like, oh, that's like Joe's injury. There's a reference to it. And so for me, it's funny when kids come up. Yeah, and this is really interesting, Rick, because people will come up and say, oh, like, you were my hero growing up. You were my dad's hero. And then they start to say, my grandfather. Say, whoa, time out. Let's not quite go that far back. But
Sammy Baugh, right?
They do. That's an interesting thing too, is that term hero. People are very kind, and they come up to us as athletes, men, women, athletes, and they say, you were my hero. And it's very kind, and we appreciate it. But all we really are is individuals that God gave a gift to. He gave me the ability to throw or run or move around or jump, whatever gift is given to an athlete. The true heroes in this world today are the men and women that put on a uniform and defend our country. The men and women that fight fires, the police officers, the first responders.
One guy said to me, he said, well, Curtis, maybe football is just a vehicle that's going to help you to do all the good that you want to do in your community and, in the country and around the world possibly. So maybe football is just that vehicle. And it was from that moment on that football took on a different purpose. And it gave me that motivation to work hard, to lift weights, to do everything that I needed to do to be successful on the field.
14,101 rushing yards, 3,329 receiving yards, 5 Pro Bowls, and obviously the Hall of Fame in 2012. But the Bart Starr Man of the Year and the Ed Block Courage Award 2001, those latter awards probably mean as much, if not more to you than the numbers.
Yes, what they all mean to me, including the Hall of Fame, including going to the Super Bowl, all of those things, what they all mean to me is that what really makes my heart sing is impacting people's lives in a positive way. So for me, every yard that I gained, every touchdown I scored, that just opened up another door for me to reach another person.